Welcome back to another episode of All in All with Alex podcast. I'm your host, of course, Alex. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Frank.
Not that special. Not that special.
Hey, special to me. You know, you're special to a lot of people. You know, you the work that you do, and I tell people, mental health to me is one of the most important things in the world, and it's often overlooked.
True.
But the things that you do and bringing awareness to it, and then also helping people find different ways to deal with it and to incorporate comedy into it as well. That's a very difficult task, and is I feel like it's much needed.
It is. Comedy helps a very difficult subject be digested. There's a reason they call it comic relief.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree. So, just for anybody that's watching this, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where it all started, things like that, and then we'll lead into more.
Yeah, started comedy in fourth grade. Told my first joke. Kids laughed. Teacher was hysterical. I thought I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. 12th grade, I took 3 years of drama, never got a good part, never got a speaking part. So I thought, you know what? If I do stand-up, I can write, direct, produce, star my own little show every night. So I did stand-up at the talent show. Won. Of course, I beat the accordion player and the folk dancers. But I was going to go to LA, and my mom said, no, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care. So you're going to be a goat herder with a college degree.
Yeah.
So I went to UNC Chapel Hill and I got 2 degrees, and then moved to San Diego, an insurance company that I was working for. Just so happens there's a comedy store in San Diego to this day, linked to the comedy store in Los Angeles. And got on stage, first 5 minutes, halfway through my set, I heard a voice in my head, "You're home." And decided I was going to do it for a living, had no idea how. 18 months later, said to my girlfriend, now my wife of 37 years, I'm going on the road to be a comic. You want to come along for the ride? Thinking she'd go, oh, hell no. And she goes, yeah. So we gave up our apartment, our jobs, put everything in storage. We couldn't fit into my tiny little Dodge Colt. And we hit the road. We were on the road I was doing stand-up. She came along for the ride for 2,629 nights in a row, 7 years and change. Yep. Did a little radio for a couple of years. And then when I got fired from radio, as there's 2 kinds of people in radio, people who have been fired, people who are going to be fired, I realized the comedy club thing was disappearing fast. So I decided I would jump to corporate comedy after dinner, after lunch, the rubber chicken circuit. Comics often ask me, what's the difference between a club comic and a corporate comic? About $5,000 a night plus travel. I'm no math major, Alex, but that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Rode that horse until into 2007. Best year I'd ever had in comedy. A couple $100,000, 96 gigs, just telling jokes. And then, the recession, the world came to an end. My bookings dried up, and we ended up filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2010. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like, literally. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. A friend of mine came up after a keynote recently because I tell that story. He goes, hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger? Hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?
Right.
Yeah. So I'd always wanted to make a living and a difference, but I could never figure out what I had to teach anybody because real speakers have content, the learning objectives, takeaways, action items. And so I read a book by a woman named Judy Carter, a friend of mine, Judy Carter. It's called The Message of You. Turn your life into a money-making speaking career. Got about halfway through and thought, damn it, I do have something to talk about. Because depression and suicide run in my family. More nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd. And I came very close to suicide. And I have 2 mental illnesses. Major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation, which, by the way, means for people like me, people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And I tell the audience, when I say small, my car broke down. I had 3 thoughts. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. The benefit of telling that story out loud is every time I've spoken since 2014, there's been at least one person in the audience who has that. And they have no idea it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak and completely alone. I've had people come up crying, They had felt alone, and all of a sudden they realized they're not alone.
Mhm.
So all that, I thought, if I got some training in suicide prevention, I could keynote on that. And so I did. I have several certifications in suicide prevention. And the second hurdle, Alex, was I've been a comic for 2.5 decades. Who's going to believe I can do anything serious? So my wife suggested do a TEDx, and I said, "What's a TEDx?" And just happened to get an application that week from one in Canada. Sent it off, got it. After that, two more TEDx events reached out to me and said, "Do you have any more mental health topics?" That one was on suicide prevention, and nobody knew I was depressed and suicidal up until that moment. I came out of the mental health closet on stage at the TEDx. My wife didn't know, my friends didn't know, nobody knew. And what I discovered was, even though one person dies of suicide in the US about every 9 minutes, hardly anybody talks about it unless you bring it up, and almost everybody has a story. And so that's what I do. My tagline or whatever is start the conversation on suicide, because if I get on stage and I admit that I have these issues and came that close, it gives other people permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences without recrimination. So oftentimes after I get done, there's a line of 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 people want to share a story, ask questions. Oftentimes the stories they share, they've never shared with anybody else. Most of them start like this: Frank, I've never told anybody this. I get that a lot. So that's my job, is essentially start the conversation.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's one of the most important jobs, because if the conversation's never started, how can it be talked about?
Yes, and uh, I've recently I did a military base, Fort Irwin, north of Barstow, California, about 30 miles north of Barstow, California. They call it the world's longest cul-de-sac. It's 30 miles and it stops right there at the base. They brought me in because 30% of the soldiers in an anonymous survey reported thoughts of suicide in the last year. And that was October. In April, I got a DM from the base psychologist that a soldier walked into his office and said, "I'm depressed and suicidal." And and the officer said, "Really? And you're here because?" And he said, "Because Frank King told me I had to tell somebody." So and I was doing a show in Cincinnati, on-site construction project. And again, 4, 5, 6 people lined up after I got done. It was mostly men. Last one was a young black man, I'm guessing mid-20s, and he's crying so hard he can't speak. So I wait, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Well, I haven't slept in 2 nights. I work on the 5th floor, thinking about jumping off every day." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because I've lost 3 people to violence in the last year. One of them was my daughter who died in my arms."
Wow.
Now, this is something he's probably never told anybody. So the HR guy for the company was standing not far away. I waved him over. I said, "Look, you need to take this young man by the hand, go get the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program binder, and you need to get him into a mental health facility today, simply for evaluation today, because he's circling the drain." So a couple months later, I was talking to the meeting planner on another issue and just terrified about asking the question, but I asked, "What happened to that nice young man?" She said, "Frank, he was evaluated, medicated, he's back on the job." That's the power of starting the conversation.
Yes, I definitely agree. And one of the things that I've had several conversations and things with people on this very podcast about mental health. And one of the things that, one of the topics that I like to get into is why people think that, well, me personally, just for me, what I've seen in my life growing up, and I'm only 30 years old. I'll be 31 on October the 7th of this year. But one thing I've always seen is that in the African American community, it's frowned upon to seek help for mental health or whatever issues that you're going through. Is
Yes.
is there, like, do you is that something you see often, and what do you think that the reason behind that being? Because my personal reason is, I think that people in the community, they just always look at, oh, you're weak for going to get help or this, but you don't realize how many people lives you could be saving by one person just going to seek the help that they need.
Yes, there are certain groups that have a higher rate for cultural reasons. African Americans, Native Americans, Alaskan Americans, in particular, because because of what you said. It's often people struggling don't come out to friends and family because it's frowned upon. You know, you're weak. It's a character flaw. It's a moral failing. You know, if you were stronger in Christ, you would. You know, so it's a shame because there's no wives' tale that mentioning the word suicide in front of somebody who's depressed will give them the idea, which is ridiculous. Suicide, what a great idea! Why didn't I think of that? Um, because in fact, mentioning the word suicide in front of somebody who's thinking about it reduces the risk they'll take their life. But again, there are cultural, you know, it's kind of on the down low in certain cultures. Also, South Asians, Pakistan people from Pakistan with Pakistani backgrounds, Indian backgrounds, Middle East, same thing. Don't believe a lot of times don't believe mental health is a mental illness thing. Um, and it's a shame because you know people suffer and die in silence. It's one of those things if you don't talk about it, silence kills in the mental health business.
Right, I agree, and that was one of my big reasons for wanting to highlight mental health because I feel like because I've brought guests up here on my podcast that deal with mental health, certain mental health issues, and I want them to be able to speak about their experiences, what they've been through, how they feel, and then maybe that'll somebody that's watching that's going through it, either that'll help them go get diagnosed or that'll help them say, you know what, I want to tell my story because it may help the next person.
Yes, and my goal is to save a life a day, and I'm awfully blunt about my mental health struggles and mental health in general, and I think that's important. You know, I don't think you should dance around it. It's if you believe somebody is suicidal, you ask them flat out, "Are you having thoughts of suicide?" Just like that. And then if they say yes, you say, "Well, do you have a plan?" And if they have a plan and it's detailed, time, place, and method, you need to get them to a mental health facility as quickly as possible, just for evaluation, to find out what's going on.
Right, right, yeah, because you'd be surprised what people going through. For example, you know, I don't know that I have mental health issues. I wouldn't say that I do. I haven't noticed anything out of the ordinary. But here in the last 2 days, I've had my grandfather and my sister both go into the hospital and become non-responsive, and the hospital tell us, "Hey, basically, come say your goodbyes because this is it." And then yesterday morning, I end up having to take my baby daughter. She's 1 year old. I had to take her to the emergency room because she was. I mean, she just wouldn't cry, wouldn't stop crying for anything. She was hurting, coughing, sneezing, and it was just. So these last couple of days have been like, you know, something that most people would be like, man, I don't see how you made it through it. But it's like, I try to keep a positive outlook on everything, even though, there's a lot of times not a positive thing that you can look at about, somebody potentially passing away or anything. But
Sure.
I try to keep that positive mindset because that's what I'm built around. So even the people that I discuss things with, my main focus is okay, hey, we're not gonna talk about a lot of negative things because when negative things start to seep into your life, then negative things start to happen. So I'm big on focusing on positivity. I mean, if you want to
Yep.
talk about something that's going on in your life, and yeah, it may be negative that you're about what you're talking about, we can talk about it, but we're going to try to figure out, okay, what positive can we flip this into? So that's kind of how I go about things.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm probably the most positive suicidal person you'll ever meet.
And so actually with that, so with so how do you go about dealing with that? Because I know you said that you have two mental illnesses, you know, basically in a nutshell, depression and suicidal thoughts. So how do you go about with dealing with that on a daily basis?
Uh, I think everybody, whether you have a mental health challenge or not, should have a self care plan. And my self care plan is diet. I'm on the keto diet and I do intermittent fasting. Exercise, try to exercise 5, 6 days a week. A good night's sleep is restorative. I think you should get a good night. You know, people it worries me nowadays. I like when people I can get by on 3 hours sleep. Oh dear God. Yeah, so I think good night's sleep, Meditate twice a day after a meal. It's an MP3 guided meditation, 29 minutes, takes me down, decompress, brings me back up, and a little bit of medication. And the through line for those, Alex, is they're all things I can control. What I eat, when I exercise, when I sleep, that kind of thing. Because people with mental illness wake up in an uncertain world every day, whether there's a pandemic or not.
Mm-hmm.
I also think of having a schedule. I go to bed about the same time every night. I get up about the same time, eat same time, work out same time, binge watch Netflix same time. I think schedule is important as well
Okay.
for a self-care plan. Medication, I got lucky. The first one I took works real well, but some people, a third of people who take a medication, particular one, love it. A third, it's okay, and the other third, hate it, not working.
Mm-hmm.
My advice is, if yours is not working, there's now a DNA cheek swab test, like Ancestry. They take your DNA, they try to match it to the drug that works best with your metabolism. So it narrows the list down to a couple, three. So you have a lot less of the, go on, doesn't work, taper off. Go on, doesn't work, taper off.
Mm-hmm.
Which is terribly frustrating. So
Yeah.
that's my plan.
Well, that's good. Most people that I've talked to about dealing with it, um, the things that you just said as far as the self care plan, none of that came up. So
Hmm.
so that's actually, I'm glad you spoke on that, because now people watching it, even the people that came on before, I'm going to send them this episode and say, hey, you know I'm no doctor or anything, but I had Frank on, and the things that he's doing is helping him be able to get through his life with
Yeah.
everything that's going on. So hey, maybe you could try it, maybe it will help you. And so that's another reason that I like bringing people on, because everybody's situation is different, everybody's experience is different, how everybody gets through things is different. So I feel like all that is very important.
Well, there's one more thing, Alex. It's called gamification. If you make a game of it with some way that you can win, and for example, if I'm having trouble getting out of bed in the morning, which happens,
Mhm.
I make a list, a physical to-do list, 6 things, and I get up and start. And the game is, when I scratch off number 6, I don't care if it's 3 in the afternoon, broad daylight. I can crawl back into bed, pull the covers over my head, and watch the next couple episodes of Billions or whatever it is I really wanted to do that day. So
Yep.
that way you set yourself up, you get yourself moving forward, and there's a win at the end, for getting up and getting moving.
Right. That's actually that's a pretty good idea as well. Um, so now that we've answered that, so I want to go back to when I had you speak about some of the things that you've been. When I had you speak about your life, talk about how did you get into comedy and things like.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the first joke that you told in fourth grade in 1962. Even though you didn't tell me that part, I kind of watched your TED
Yeah.
talk. Uh, but I found it interesting. You was talking about the Ray Bans. You said they were.
Oh yeah. Oh Lord. Yeah, we didn't have fashion frames in the '60s. Guys had those black plastic Buddy Holly Ray-Ban, and girls had cat eye glasses with a couple of colors. And I was terribly vain. I didn't want to wear them. Well, because I'm wearing hush puppies, polyester pants, band lawn shirt. You add the glasses, that's like head to toe birth control. There's no way a woman's ever going to get anywhere close to me. So I didn't want to wear them. But my teacher knew I couldn't see the board. I mean, I really, my whole family is really nearsighted. And so she thought the reason I wasn't wearing them was because I was afraid what the other kids would say. So she thought the best way to solve this problem was have everybody see me in my glasses at the same time. Okay, let's pull the band-aid off. There's Frank, there's his glasses, let's move on. Probably a good plan, but she got me to the front of the room, had me turn away from the class, had me put my glasses on, turn back to the class. Then she looks down and she goes, see, you look intelligent. And I looked up at her and said, yes, that would explain all the laughter. At which point she was hysterical. She had to excuse herself to go to the teacher's lounge. She was laughing so hard. So that told me at that moment, I am going to be a stand up comedian.
Well, it's worked pretty well for you because, like I said, I watched a couple of your TEDx talks, and I definitely plan on watching more, of course. And I hope that everybody that's going to be watching this video also, takes the time to look at them. I'll also put all the links in the description and things like
Oh,
that,
good.
to make sure that they can have a direct link to it. They don't have to search it; they can just click on it; it'll take them straight to it.
Be
Uh,
great.
so, so how long have you been doing the comedy? I know you said fourth grade was when you told your first joke, but when did you officially? What year was that when you asked your wife, at the time your girlfriend, but your wife now, to go on the road with you? What year was that, and how long has it been since then?
Well, let's see. The first open mic was April 1st, '84, April Fool's Day, '84. And then in December of '85, I said to my wife, or my girlfriend, now my wife, I'm leaving to go on the road the day after Christmas, 26th of December '85.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't set out to be on the road for 7 years and change, but we didn't have a home. So, when you do comedy, they put you up wherever you happen to be.
Right, right.
And there were some weeks there, some weekends, where we stayed with relatives all over the country. I saw most of my relatives in between the family reunions because we'd be passing through Nashville where my aunt lived, and we had a couple of days off, so we crashed at her place. So that was one of the benefits of traveling and doing that. We saw people we wouldn't ordinarily see.
Right.
But yeah, we left day after Christmas '85, came off the road in April of '93. That's when I went to work at the radio station in Raleigh, my old hometown, North Carolina, as a sidekick, and that gave us a chance to come off the road and settle down a bit. And then, like I said, after I got fired, the comedy club thing was winding down. So I thought, well, I've got clean comedy, I'll do corporate comedy. And then I realized how much more money you can make doing corporate comedy. And I've done colleges. I did college comedy. Still work the occasional cruise ship comedy gig, which is another source of revenue. Summertime is not a lot of conferences or conventions, so that's a good time to do the cruise ships.
Okay. Okay. So in that time where you and your wife were on the road, so when did you guys get married? How could you do that when you're traveling 290 something nights,
Yeah.
2,900 or something nights in a row? Like,
Well, what we did was it was '87, and the comedy club in Raleigh was owned by a guy who was the assistant youth director at the YMCA when I was growing up, which is a great break. And so he would book me every other 4th of July because that's when we had the family reunion. So my wife and I decided we would get married at the family reunion in '87. That because everybody would be in town, nobody would have to take an additional flight, spend any more money to come to the wedding. They'd all be there.
Right, right.
It was already catered. I mean, we're already going to have barbecue.
Yeah.
So we got married in on the 4th of July in 1987 in the backyard of my cousin's house.
Okay.
And I did 3 shows that night at the comedy club. Back in the day, they were doing 2 on Fridays, 3 on Saturdays. And my wife says she chose 4th of July to get married because she was guaranteed fireworks on her wedding night. And I chose it because it was Independence Day and I couldn't resist the irony. So that's how we were able to, get married and make money that weekend. Thanks to my friend who, has had the comedy club for a long. He always booked me. He always overpaid me. He was really nice to me because we'd known each other for since I was a kid at the YMCA.
Right. That's interesting. I like it. I like I like the whole thought process behind it, and it sounds like she's picking up a little bit of that comedy from you as well.
She is on her own extremely funny. I didn't realize that when I met her, but shortly after we started dating, I gave her a jacket, an LL Bean Weekender they call it. It's corduroy, got wool lining. She's looking at herself in the mirror with the jacket on, and she goes, "Oh, this is really nice. It's the only thing a boy ever gave me that I didn't have to get treated for."
Oh,
Yeah, and she has a wicked sense of humor.
What was your reaction?
I was delighted that because I was working a cruise one time, and I like the cruising because you know a lot of downtime, and I like to wake up in the morning, get a pot of coffee, and write jokes. That's my creative time. So I wrote a joke one morning on the ship as we're sailing into a port, and I emailed it to a friend because it didn't fit in my act, but I thought he'd buy it. And sure enough, he sent me an email back. Man, that's a great joke. I'll give you $100 for it. So when I got to the port, I called my wife and I said, "Honey, you're not going to believe this. This morning I made $100 lying flat on my back in bed." There's this long pause, and she goes, "What a coincidence." Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So you guys never have a dull moment in your marriage, then?
No, it's like a sitcom around here. You know, some of the when we're driving somewhere and I'm trying to drive and shove something in a little litter bag I've got wrapped over the stick shift, and I can't get it in the bag because the bag keeps collapsing. I can't get it in the hole. And she looks at me and she goes, "Well, that explains why we don't have kids."
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's good that you guys can have that fun and get a lot of laughter because laughter heals, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've been through some. You know, either bankruptcy will blow up a marriage or make you stronger. And fortunately, in our case, it drove us closer together. And one thing you learn in bankruptcy, if there's a silver lining, you learn what you need versus what you want.
Hmm. Yeah, I can only imagine. So
I hope you never experience that.
I try my best not to, but you never know what life brings. But so as far as when you were on your, so in all your years of comedy, what was your worst show?
Kingsport, Tennessee, the grocery company. It was an old grocery store, like an old dry goods store on Main Street in Kingsport, and they turned the first floor into a restaurant, second floor into a bar, third floor into a comedy club. And I'm not saying everybody in Kingsport, Tennessee is a Bible thumping, race baiting, homophobic redneck who thinks the Holocaust is fake and wrestling is real, just the people who came to my show. They loved the guy before me, comic named Pat Miller, unfortunately now deceased, but very funny. And they loved him. I mean, and I could see why they created a platform for the comics to stand on like a riser
Mhm.
so that all the audience could see us. They made it out of wood. And he was 300 pounds, 3 feet tall, 3 feet wide. He was walking across and a board broke, like a 2x4 broke under his foot. And you could hear the snap all over the room. And this is the best ad lib I've ever heard. He turned to the audience. And he goes, "Nobody panic. It's just a stage I'm going through." Yeah, that
Yeah,
was their reaction as well.
yeah, that's good.
So I got up with my little, thinking jokes, and they hated me. And I couldn't see past the first row, but I could see in the first row the guy right in front of me, and over his shoulder was the hand of the guy behind him with a nickel-plated 38 revolver, pointed at me with the hammer back.
What? Why
Yeah,
you're on stage?
yeah. So I turned sideways to make a smaller target. I lowered my elbow to try to cover my vital organs, and I waited. And after about 90 seconds, a woman in the back screams, "Either shoot him or put it away." Fortunately, he put it away.
Oh, wow,
That was probably the roughest night
that
I
is
had.
that is crazy.
Well, I tell young comics, look, what comics I'm teaching, you don't get paid for the good shows. You get paid for the really bad shows like that. I mean, I've had a lot of good shows. I opened up one summer, 2 nights, Michigan Amphitheater for Randy Travis, country music star. 5,000 people each night. And now Randy's got a band and lyrics and music and backup singers, and I got a microphone. 5,000 people, but never even broke a sweat. Great shows.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's so. When that show happened and you had the gun pointed at you, like what, like how old were you at the time when that?
I would have been, let's see, 26, probably mid 30s.
Okay, okay. So you had been doing it. You probably been on stage what 7 or 8 years by then.
It was 7 year tour. I was probably right in the middle, probably 3.5, 4 years. And we played beer bars, pool halls, and honky tonks, and drunk idiots screaming, "Tell us some jokes we can dance to." So yeah, it's every now and then I'm doing a corporate gig, and there's a photographer, and they'll, which is out of respect, they'll say to me, "I'm going to be taking pictures during your set or your keynote.
Mm-hmm.
Will that bother you?" I said, "Look, 7 years beer bars, pool halls, honky tonks. Um, Short of pulling a pin on a hand grenade and rolling it on stage, I'm pretty hard to shake. So go ahead and take your little picture."
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Especially when you got a rusty 38 pointed at you.
Yeah. I mean, I had chairs thrown at me. Um, Unfortunately, I saw it coming. I couldn't see past first row, but somebody got mad, and it was a metal chair with a padded seat. They picked it up and they threw it at the stage. Well, fortunately, I was facing forward and I saw it coming through the light. So I turned sideways and just let it go by and turned back and never even stopped talking. And I got a standing ovation.
Hey, well that works. that,
Yeah,
that was your version of it's just a stage you're going through.
exactly. I mean, I saw it coming, thank God, and it was able to just turn sideways, let it go by. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a rough business.
I can only imagine. So, a couple more questions before I let you get out of here. I know you got a busy day ahead of you. With everything that you have going on. Um, so as far as the TED talks and things like that, like, can you just explain to some of the people that's watching, what a TEDx talk is, uh,
Yeah,
how can they get into it, how do you coach people into it, things like that.
yeah. It's a TEDx is a TED is a there's a once a year 2 to 3, 4, 5 day speaking event in Vancouver, British Columbia. That's Big TED. That's TED. And then TEDx, the X means local. And there's a couple hundred TEDx talks in the US, a couple thousand worldwide. And the premise is you have an idea worth spreading. That's what they want. They want people with an idea worth spreading. And what I do with my clients is we get together once a week on Zoom for an hour. We fill out applications. If you go to TEDx Applications 2024 in a Google search, you'll find links to apply to TEDx Talks. We apply all over the country. I've never had one I didn't have to fly to.
Mhm.
And you need to be creative in your pitch because a couple hundred people apply. So
Right,
you want to, it's a marketing pitch to the selection committee.
right.
And so I help my clients be as creative as possible, title, subtitle. And then if they get an audition, I had a guy today, we spend half an hour preparing him for the audition. And then if they get to talk, then I help them write the talk. And then once they've done it, help them leverage that to get speaker bookings. But the key is creativity, I do believe, because I've had 2 talks that I got that I didn't have to audition for because they like the title and subtitle so much. And the second one is my favorite and the only one I've ever gotten a standing ovation for. And the title of the talk was Mental Health and the Orgasm. Treat your depression single handedly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love my iPhone, but it is my second favorite handheld device. Yeah, it was hysterical. So yeah, I think that's what I do for my clients is help them be creative so they get picked,
Okay.
and then help them use that TEDx to land some speaking gigs. And most of them want to be professional speakers.
Right. So, if we have anybody that's watching that, want to become a client of yours, like where could they reach out to you to be able
Oh,
to become a
it's a,
client?
it's an easy one. It's howtomakemoneyspeaking.com.
You can't get any easier than that.
No, and what's amazing, Alex, is I was trying to figure out a website, URL.
Uh-huh.
And my wife goes, well, try howtomakemoneyspeaking.com. And I thought, in 2023, that's got to be
Yeah,
gone long. No, it was available.
yeah. It's like, let me buy this domain right now.
I did because I thought, how could it be? Howtomakemoneyspeaking.com is not taken? Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. You would think it would be.
You would.
Okay, okay. So they just go on there and they reach out to you, maybe fill out a form or something online, and
Yeah, there's a little button on there, book a discovery call for free.
okay.
I mean, also there's a phone number on there. Click to call. Just touch it on your smartphone, and it'll call me.
Okay. Okay. So is there anything else that you is that the only avenue that you're going down as far as booking clients, or do you do other things that people can reach out to you about as well?
I'm on LinkedIn. Type in Frank King comedian on LinkedIn. You'll find me. And it's also all about making money speaking.
Okay. 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 Cool. So for the most part, I think that pretty much answered most of the questions that I had, and anyone else that's interested in making money talking or getting on a TED talk or uh, you know hearing your story or anything like that, they could also I'll leave the link for that as well down below, so that way they can reach out to you.
Yeah, please. Or if you're suicidal, call 988. If you're just having a bad day, call a crazy person.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you would like to share with the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, my phone number. I'm a crazy person. 858 405 5653. 858 405 5653. You can put that in the show notes. And like I said, if you're suicidal, call 988. But if you're just having a bad day, call a crazy person. And about once every 2 weeks, somebody calls me about themselves or a loved one, looking for somebody. Facebook messaged me today. They had a friend who lost somebody by suicide, and they wanted resources for the person who is a lost survivor. And so I sent them 3 different websites. That's what those websites are for.
Okay. Okay. Well, everybody that's watching, you guys heard it here first. I would like to thank Frank for taking the time out of his busy schedule to come on and tell his story and talk about everything that he's encountered in his life. If you guys would like to reach out to him, all the information will be down in the description to reach out to him. Um, and hey, you just watched another episode of All in Our Alex. Peace.
And maybe we saved your life. Who knows?
That's the plan. One life a day.
Yep.